The writing test only gives 30 minutes to prepare your essay. Under these time constraints, mistakes will be made. However, if you know of the common errors beforehand, you're less likely to fall into their trap. Let's review some common mistakes to avoid. I know that when I'm coaching, I've always tried to stay on the positive and tell the athletes what they need to do, how to accomplish the task. And I avoid all the negatives, all right? Try and stay on the real positive. This is what you have to do. This is how you do it. Because I know that sometimes when someone's saying, don't do this, don't do that, that word don't seems to be ignored and all you hear is do this, do that. So I'm going to break that rule and talk a little bit about mistakes to avoid on the writing test right now. So these are some of the major mistakes that are made when students are approaching the writing test. The biggest one is time mismanagement. Running out of time or leaving too much time. The time-sensitive introductions and conclusions is the third point in here. The thing that you have to keep in mind is pacing. And we give you a whole pacing guide here about how much time you should be spending on each section. You'll get that down if you practice. And the other issue there is sometimes people will rush. All right, 30 minutes, that's all I have. And all of a sudden, they've written their whole essay, and they are left with 6 or 7 minutes left. In itself, okay, that's a lot of time to go back and look for little errors, but it probably means you haven't developed your essay enough either. So you want to be aware of time and pacing. And then finally, the other part about time is spending too much time on your introduction or too much time developing this fancy conclusion, and then you don't have enough time to go back and look for some of those grammar errors. It takes practice. Another mistake that students sometimes make in the writing test is getting off topic or getting off track or sidetracked. We call it running off at the mouth with meaningless words or lacking focus. The thing that's going to help to make sure that you stay on task is your outline. Don't veer from it. Keep the desired effect or what you want the reader to get out of it in mind with each sentence that you're writing. Sometimes you might actually personally care about the topic and you might want to add something, and you start adding a side story, for example, which isn't a bad idea in writing, but sometimes that side story then reminds you of something else, and then you start running off into a tangent. You're wasting valuable time and it confuses the reader a little bit. So just make sure that you're always on topic. Unanswered prompts is another common error when it comes to the writing test, or simply not addressing the prompt. What you have to do is summarize the two main arguments and then support the side that you specifically choose. In the prompt itself, they give you the directions, and you want to underline it just so it's right there for you. It'll say choose one of the two points of view or develop your own point of view. Whichever one you're going to do, underline that point of view. That's the one you have to prove. You might agree with both, but in taking that one point of view, you need to dispel the second one. They're not asking you to write all the great things about both points of view. They're asking you to choose one. So make sure that you leave that prompt answered completely. Sometimes when it comes to the writing test, we throw the grammar part out and you start writing the way you speak. That is in error when it comes to taking the ACT writing test. We can't forget those grammar conventions. They're taking a look at that and they're combining it along with your English grade because they are looking at those two things hand in hand. English is 2/3 and the writing is 1/3 for a combined score. So you have to make sure that you do not lack that transfer from material studied for the English portion. So you know what mistakes are common to writing in the time that you spent preparing for the English section. Don't forget about those. Keep them in your mind. Keep those topics in your mind when you're writing, such as parallelism, making sure that the subjects and the verbs, if you have a singular subject, you have a singular verb. If you have a singular pronoun, it's a singular pronoun. Pronoun use is one of those topics that comes up multiple times on the ACT English portion. Expect them to be looking for your pronoun use as well, as subject-verb agreement and sentence fragments. Each sentence needs to have a subject and a predicate before you put that period there. You will lose some points if you end up with sentence fragments throughout your writing. Another common error is not acknowledging the other side or the other point of view. You cannot ignore the counter arguments, especially if they're obvious. You end up losing credibility that way. So you have to address the other side while proving that your side's better, while they have a point of view. The pros just do not outweigh the cons. My pros, the things that I'm saying are more important in this essay, all right, are better than the other smaller, more important things that the other side might bring to the table. So ultimately, my choice is correct. That's the way you need to approach that essay. Along with counter-arguments is incomplete arguments. To support a statement that the school days should not be longer, one may say that they're too busy. You have to explain what too busy means. Too busy because you participate in a sport for over an hour a day. And then you work 4 hours at a part-time job, leaving you just enough time to eat and start your homework at 9 p.m. Now, I realize then, this person's too busy. All right? They have proved their point that if it was a longer school day, that would be a detriment to their lifestyle. Now, keep in mind these common mistakes while cruising through the development of your essay, and you'll be able to avoid them.